Hello there, YouTubers. Jason here,
Welcome.
Wyatt over there.
I am. We're trying to get our smarts on, as you can see.
Yeah. Wearing the specs tonight.
I didn't
I
want to
usually
feel
have,
so bad. I'm kidding. I need to start wearing these a lot more. I try to wear more with the computer work now.
yeah, I just bought these pair online and got the blue. It's supposed to filter the blue light, so that's why they might kind of look weird when you get that reflection on there. But I guess it's better than the red eye I had last episode. Um, yeah, people might just stay away from that one. But anyway, we're back. We're here tonight to continue our Rediscovered series, and we're on to Street Hawk. Oh my gosh, love Street Hawk.
One of Jason's favorites. As much as I'm like kind of I'll call it the connoisseur of maybe the Dukes. The Street Hawk is Jason's connoisseur, or he's a connoisseur of Street Hawk rather.
Yes,
He
yes,
is. He's really kept up with it. I'm the guy that's usually on the sci-fi stuff, knowing all the Airwolf and Knight Rider tidbits, whatever. But Street Hawk evaded me. That's the best way to put it. It evaded me so much. Jason was able to land a DVD set a few years ago, and he's been watching it ever since.
yeah. I've kind of deviated from our rules as far as stuff that we haven't seen since it came out or have never seen. And
Well, that's not really deviated. It's half truth. I haven't watched it since way back when. You've just happened to do it, so it's half truth there.
Well, that's part of the reason too. I wanted to get on it because I've only this is the probably the third time I've been through the whole series. So, and it's only 13 episodes, so it's not a huge long run. But at the same time, I knew you hadn't been in it either, so I wanted to cover it on the show.
Right, and that's part of our genre, or so.
Yeah. So speaking of which, let's go ahead and we'll start the podcast, and we'll save our tidbits about the show for the actual podcast.
Sounds great.
But we appreciate everybody watching. Again, if you've been kind of watching us and watching, the YouTube little pre-show we've been doing, we're trying to get back on track to maybe getting in the studio once a week to produce new shows. So hopefully this will continue the trend through the new year.
Right. We've said this off and on through several episodes. Whatever entity we use, we want to set up a schedule. Just life happens to get in our way. So unfortunately, that is the real reality. Is well, I think we've said this a couple times, that this is really a hobby for us. So we have day jobs, we have families, and then when we can, our schedules might meet up to do these podcasts.
Yeah.
But we keep endeavoring to do a once a week at the very least episode. That's our goal, and it's still there. Maybe 2019 can be a little bit better goal. So achievable. That's rather a more achievable goal.
Yeah. So 52 weeks, if we could hit like maybe in the, we'll say 30, 35 range, I think that'd be good.
Yeah.
Be probably more than we've released this year.
Right.
I don't know. I haven't counted up how many we released in 2018, but anyway, we'll hopefully get you more episodes in 2019 in the feed. And again, I always appreciate your feedback on the YouTube channel and just anywhere on the website you want to go and leave feedback. We appreciate it. And we have a few commenters that are regulars, and we appreciate you guys. Gerald Space is one, and we've got some others over on the Mask channel as well, Agents of Mask. But we appreciate you guys, and your feedback each time. It helps keep us motivated to do the show when we get good feedback, or change it up if we get bad feedback. So anyway, let's go ahead and let's get rolling here on Street Hawk.
That's great.
Welcome back to the Rediscovered the 80s podcast and the fourth episode of Rediscovered, which is our journey to review obscure and overlooked TV shows, movies, and cartoons from the 80s. I'm one of your hosts, Jason. With me is my longtime friend and co host, Wyatt. How are you, sir?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be back in the recording studio here and continuing our journey to reviewing some of the stuff back in the 80s that we remember and maybe not remember at all. Um, if you obviously looked at the title to this podcast, you know we are going to review Street Hawk tonight. Uh, oh man, this is one of those shows that I just wish would have gone more than 13 episodes. Wyatt.
I agree. I actually was really excited about this series. I don't know what really happened. I've watched the after highlight. Maybe it was the 10-year, 20-year anniversary, whatever they did, talking
Uh-huh.
about it. But I guess there just wasn't as much ratings for it to continue, which
Yeah,
is surprising. It's the same with, we said the same thing about Highwayman. It was surprising there wasn't enough ratings for it to continue.
right, right. And we'll get into more of that tonight. We've got a lot of information to pass along. Gone through a lot of fact-finding research trips to the web to dive into Street Hawk and everything that kind of came along with that. And we're just glad to be back to keep reviewing these. We've done one complete cycle now, so we've gone through a TV show and a cartoon series and a movie. Now we're back to another television show. And Street Hawk, it was originally broadcast in 1985 on ABC. The tagline, of course, is "The Man, the Machine, Street Hawk." It starred Rex Smith and Joe Rigobuto, but the real star, of course, which we would probably both say, Wyatt, was that $3 million, quote unquote, all-terrain attack motorcycle designed to fight urban crime. Do you remember watching this at all in its original run?
Maybe one episode, and I think it was is it the second or third one where George Clooney is
Second.
co-starred.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the only thing I remember is when Jesse gets knocked off the bike and you see the helmet flip around and you see the video image from the command center point of view. That's the only thing I remember seeing. I can't remember anything else until obviously I've recently watched it. That's the only excerpt I remember watching.
Uh-huh.
Even years from now, that's the one I remember.
I remember watching it with my dad mainly. My dad was into the show. And I didn't remember really any specific episodes as a kid, that I watched, but the faint memories were that the bike could, what I would call turbo boost, like Kit,
Mhm.
whenever he needed to. And then there was that moment, at least it was in the pilot and also in that episode that you mentioned, where he gets separated from the bike, and it's almost like it's almost like being separated from a part of you,
Yeah.
and you're out kind of by yourself. You don't have any weaponry on you at all you are is this dude in a black suit with a dark face shield. And even like in what the episode you were talking about, he loses the helmet altogether.
Right.
So he's away from the bike, and the bad guys are kind of between him and getting back to the bike into his actual firepower. I remember that kind of feeling or that bit about the show as a kid, and that kind of stuck with me. But I hadn't watched it up until probably about 2 years ago when I actually bought the DVD set. And for our review was about the third time that I've been through the show. So I've deviated a little bit from our our plan behind the Rediscovered podcasts, in that I have watched it a little bit more, but I knew you hadn't watched it at all. So I'm glad we are getting to review it.
Right. Like you said, it's kind of like a half truth, if you want to call it that. But you're right. I haven't watched it. I haven't seen it. I knew of it, type of thing, and that's really the extent of it. I guess I never had a reason to look back, which is hilarious because I like my '80s. I like all the classics. It's a pretty sad we're calling it the classics. Geez, what's wrong with that? But I for some reason it's one of those I just never was, I guess, ambitious to look for until we got this assignment, and it's
Yeah.
man, I loved it except for episode 9 because I have no idea what episode 9 is. My my I don't know what it is about my link, the link that you sent me. I can't
Uh-huh.
watch episode 9. I don't know if it's like it keeps saying that player's not available, video feed's not available. I get everything but the video.
Well, we'll get to that because that was a pretty good episode. It was actually one of my favorites. So I'm sorry that you missed that one. We actually found the show. I found it over there on, I think it was Daily Motion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they had pretty much every episode uploaded, including the little documentary clip they have with the DVD set was on there as well. So that was, I was glad to find that on there for you, so I didn't have to like mail you my my DVD set,
Right.
Um, but anyway, let's go a little bit through the development of the show, and then I'll turn it over to you. You can kind of go through its broadcast and home video history, and we'll kind of keep going back and forth, kind of like that through my notes here.
All right, sounds great.
The working title for Street Hawk was actually called The Falconer. I thought that was interesting in that they, I don't know, like the bird, the bird metaphor, I guess, or something. The main characters were created by a guy named Paul Bellis. He was the creative and supervising producer. He wrote the pilot and one of the other episodes, the Unsinkable 453 episode. This guy was also known for producing shows like Quantum Leap. He also wrote an episode of that and writing episodes for The Jeffersons, The Incredible Hulk, Silk Stockings, and a lot more. Another creative and executive producer was Bob Walterstorff, and he's got basically the same kind of writing credits as Bellis. I guess they might have been a team for a while. But he wrote some shows, also wrote the story for the 1994 Little Rascals movie. I dug up on him. So these two guys were essentially the creators of the show. The kind of core format, what I'll call, was developed by Bruce Lansbury, and he's actually the brother of Angela Lansbury, who was the star of Murder, She Wrote. And he had initially commissioned the creation of the program. And he did get a creator and supervising producer credit with the show. But his other credits include producing shows, like I said, Murder, She Wrote. He was on producing that show, Buck Rogers, Wonder Woman, Mission Impossible, and Wild Wild West. And he was also a producer for 21 episodes of Knight Rider from 85 to 86. So that pedigree in there, you can kind of see, how that translated into Street Hawk, having a Knight Rider under your belt.
Right.
So he wrote, let's see. I don't know why I put that in there. That was just an episode of Knight Rider that he wrote. Another kind of developer or key part of the show, I think, was the music, which was done by this group called Tangerine Dream. And this was actually the Street Hawk theme was actually put on an album. It was basically a song before it became the Street Hawk theme, but they did the music for the show, which I thought was fantastic. All the synthesized, that new wave kind of, 80s music that we're accustomed to, and building off of the theme of the show into other smaller little, bits that you hear during the episode, I thought was really great. So that we'll get into the music a little bit later, but I'm going to turn it over to you, Wyatt, and let's talk about the kind of broadcast history and its release to home video.
Right. Originally broadcast on January 4th through May 16th in 1985 on ABC. Like we said, it ran for 13 episodes, including a 90-minute pilot episode. It was also broadcast in at least 8 other countries. Street Hawk was originally planned for the fall of 1984, but the Monday night, I'm sorry, which was the Monday primetime slot at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. Man, I miss those. You remember back in the day when everything was like everything was layered like that, advertising,
Yeah.
everything. Watch at 8 p.m. 7 Central or something like that. Um, However, ABC executives changed their minds when the summer series Call to Glory did well and decided to push Street Hawk to mid-season. It then ran on Friday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. Um, Reruns aired on USA Network. Man, I loved old USA Network.
I did too.
Um, I'll leave that tangent go. I was going to talk about the Airwolf tangent, but I'll leave that go. Um, it was on Saturdays at 10 a.m. from 1990 to 91. There were 2 official releases of the Street Hawk pilot movie on VHS in 1985. One was from MCA Canada and contained the full 90-minute pilot, which was actually 76 minutes.
Right.
Obviously, you got to count for commercials.
Right.
And the other was the US MCA release that ran about 60 minutes. Uh-oh. We always got to jump into something, don't we? There are short bits of footage that are unique to each release. For example, the US version includes a line or two of dialogue not present in the Canadian version. Other differences include a blue lightning style primary weapon in the Canadian version, whereas the red laser beam from the rest of the series appears on the US release, and actual stunt jumps on the US tape instead of matted in fake jumps in the Canadian version. That's interesting.
Yeah. I thought that was cool too.
On July 13th of 2010, Shout Factory. I like them now. I've been liking them for a while. They like to release stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They released Street Hawk, the complete series, a 4 DVD box set featuring all 13 episodes of the series. There were special features which included all new 41-minute documentary entitled The Making of a Legend and an unaired pilot featuring different Street Hawk firepower. And now it is streaming on Amazon Prime, at least for the time being.
Well, it was, yeah. When when I originally did these notes, it was on Prime, and now they've removed it. But you can find it on Amazon to get it direct. Sure. Yeah, and Shout Factory has from time to time run marathons on their channel, on their streaming channel.
They have one, dude. I need to find that. Now you tell me. They're the ones that released Viper. Viper is out, but when I've looked at, I looked at Amazon for it. It was like a $60 box set or something. Like, yeah, I'll wait till it comes down.
Yeah, so I've got a Roku player, so it's on there that you can find the Shout Factory channel. But yeah, it was I think it was just like last month maybe that they ran the like full 13 episode marathon.
Nice.
So you can find it there sometimes. Let's dip into the merchandise a little bit. Wasn't a lot, obviously because it only lasted 13 episodes, but it was pretty big in the UK, and they actually had 4 novelizations published by Target Books in the UK. There was one book was basically adapted the pilot episode, and then 3 other books took 2 separate stories, 2 separate episodes into one novel there, and adapted them. The toys, I really wish we would have got some more toys because I would be trying to hunt those down. There is a model, like a plastic glue together model of Jesse's Mustang. I've seen that. Ertl, who they have released a lot of diecast stuff over the years. They actually released a Street Hawk stunt bike in the UK that had one of those like friction wheels with the pull strip.
Yep.
You pulled it in and you rip the strip out, and then you go doing stunts.
Right.
That's that kind of thing. They released one of those. There was other little color and activity books. There was a read along cassette book over in the UK. There was even some knockoffs in other countries. I want to say over in the like like Indonesia, those type of places had some figures that were labeled as Street Hawk. They were, knockoffs of other figures. Right. And then there was a video game released on the ZX Spectrum, which was, I believe, mainly a UK computer video game system. That came out, and have not tried to play that. I know there are some emulators online. If you go to archive.org, I believe it's there. And I also found a pretty cool Street Hawk site I did want to plug as well. I think it's just streethawkonline.com. And they have a way to get the emulator and actually play the game there as well. So I've seen pictures of it. I have not actually played it, but I don't know. Maybe someday I'll have to try that out. See if it's any good. Let's go ahead and let's get into the synopsis of the show and get into some of the characters and I'll say voice actors of the show, because the intro was pretty much, I think, what everybody remembers.
Right.
Opening credits.
Well, right now your video is crap. I'll be honest.
Well, as long as my audio isn't crap,
your
I don't care about my video.
Your body, the whole bit rate is so slow. It's very lagged.
Let me. I'm going to drop down to the one lower here. It's probably going to be even worse, but I might be more matched up. Blow the nose. I'll get a drink.
Sorry about that. But yeah,
right.
It hasn't caught up all that much better, but just let you know.
As long as the audio's there.
Yeah, the audio's here.
Okay.
So the synopsis is the Jesse Mock, who is an ex-motorcycle policeman injured in the line of duty, now a police troubleshooter. He's been recruited for a top secret government mission to ride Street Hawk, an all-terrain attack motorcycle designed to fight urban crime. I'm trying to do like they do. I don't have
pretty good.
People of incredible speeds up to 300 miles an hour and immense firepower. Only one man, Federal Agent Norman Tuttle, knows Jesse Mock's true identity. The man, the machine, Street Hawk.
That was pretty good, actually. I like that.
But yeah, that guy, I don't recall who he...
I got him written down here. We'll get to him. He was a couple other... once you see his credits, you'll be like, oh, yeah, okay.
I'm sure.
I can hear his voice. But yeah, so that was kind of the main, that opening sequence was great. And I'm glad that they left it in each episode.
I like it.
I don't know, for some reason, you don't need it after, the fourth or fifth episode. You're going to understand what's going on. But I just like that whole sequence, and it just kind of, brought everything together. And you think about a short run series like this, and somebody tuning in at episode 4 or 5, they want to understand, what the backstory is. And you just drop in that little 60-second or 90-second narrative, and they're right there. They don't need anything else.
Right. What I liked, I don't know what it was, like Knight Rider. Knight Rider had the pilot never had a voiceover, but then later it did. Same, I think the same with Highwayman. But even Airwolf had a little bit of a intro after the pilot for, I think it was about 3 or 4 episodes when Lance Legault did it, and then he disappeared off the scene, which it was probably not so bad, but rewatching all this, I mean, that was kind of the establishment. But yes, if you're in season 3, you don't really need to reestablish it, but that's what made Knight Rider so fun, was hearing Knight Rider one man, it was just awesome. But anyway,
Yeah, and you do notice that from season to season, like in Knight Rider, because at the beginning you're like, where's Knight? Where's him saying one man can make a difference, Michael?
Well, even that. I'm sorry, we're on a bunny trail, but like the season one, the the ending credits had him, one man can make a difference, Michael. And then it goes off, Michael Knight, a lone
Right.
crusader. He does that to peter it off. And that was always awesome. I loved watching that. But then you get into season 2 and season 3, and so it's where'd it go? Hey, where'd it go? That's supposed to be there. It's part of it.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah. You get used to it. You do. Especially, I mean, there's no diss on really voice acting nowadays, but those guys that was the professionals back then. You get the get the celebrity now to do all the voiceovers for the movies and such. And you get one guy that had that distinctive voice, and you popped him in, and he knew how to narrate, just a few lines of dialogue. It makes a lot of difference, I think.
Right.
So anyway, well, let's jump into the characters on the show and the actors behind them. Of course, Jesse Mock is our main character, played by Rex Smith, who was a bit of a teenage idol back in the day. Actually released some records and did a little just from the documentary there. He's talking about doing a little tour. I don't know if he was hitting the malls or whatever, but teenage heartthrob in the 70s, mid 70s, late 70s, and basically I want to say this was his first like major role that he landed. They had actually had screen tested George Clooney for the role of Jesse Mock, and he was actually one of the creators. It was his first choice, but ABC didn't want him, and he ended up, guest appearing in that second episode.
Mm-hmm.
Also read that Don Johnson was considered for the role of Jesse Mock.
Interesting.
But he became unavailable when NBC picked up Miami Vice in 1984. So as the development was going the year before is when Miami Vice took off. So he was essentially, not taken for that role.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I liked Rex Smith. I thought, well, I'll get into some of our favorite things later in the episode, but I thought he did a great job as Jesse Mock, and going through the pilot and the show off, and then having the his partner go down and being frustrated and being in the PR role, and then getting back on the bike and everything. I thought he played it very well, and can't really imagine anybody else doing it. He just seemed to fit that role perfectly to me.
Right, I agree. I liked him in this series. I did not know that George Clooney and Don Johnson were up for grabs. I really didn't remember seeing that, but I thought he fit the role very, very well. Sometimes you can see, and like you said, we'll get down to here a couple actresses, but I thought he fit the role pretty nicely.
Yep.
That leads us on to Joe Regabuto, who plays Agent Norman Tuttle. It's funny how people can just look the part, and he looked the part. It sounds corny, but he looked the part of the computer guy, that would do this. He's known for TV. He's done on TV like Frank Fontano on Murphy Brown, including the new season, which I've yet to watch any of Murphy Brown.
I haven't watched any of it either, but I did know he was one of the main characters on that show for a long time.
He was on Mork and Mindy. That's where I probably remember seeing him the most. I remember seeing his face. I just couldn't place him.
Mm-hmm.
He was on Knots Landing, Magnum PI, Ace, Crawford, Private Eye, The Associates. He's also appeared somewhat recently, on NCIS, Jag, Castle, Night Court. I gotta watch it now. I gotta find him one night, and a lot of others. His movie credits include Raw Deal with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Lassiter, The Sword and the Sorcerer, Deadly Weapon, and The Star Chamber. He has also directed, uh, TV director rather, including 43 episodes on George Lopez, 20 episodes of Murphy Brown, kind of here and there for Friends, Veronica's Closet, Titus, and others. He's been all around. I didn't realize he was so involved.
Yeah, it's been mainly those bit parts, except for like what we were talking about with Murphy Brown being on there for several seasons. But yeah, he's like a lot of actors do. They jump behind the camera at some point and start directing, and uh, I guess it's just a natural offshoot to get behind the camera after you've been in front of it for a while.
You know, another bunny trail, but I've noticed a lot of people, especially if they're in this series long enough, they become in some form typically the executive producer, if not the director. It's one or the
Yeah,
other. And it's just fascinating to see how deeply they get involved in the whole making of
yeah,
their uh their show or movie or whatever it is. It's just I find it fascinating when you're starting to read the credits. Back in the day, we never read the credits. We didn't watch. We didn't see.
right.
We might recognize David Hasselhoff or something, but other than that, we really didn't care. Now I go through. I start to pay attention, and then I see it. Um,
Yeah,
I didn't pay attention to Joe, but we'll use him as an example. Joe, Ragabuto. Oh, he's the director too. What? What? Well, that's cool. Okay, he's really
yeah,
involved. I like this.
yeah. It's almost like they become one of the showrunners once the show is successful and start going across multiple seasons, and they get so much tied to it
Right.
that they want to make sure that it's done right and in the style that they remember from episode 1.
Right.
Yeah, that was cool. On to the next character. We'll get on to Commander Leo Antebelli, who was played by Richard Venture. He actually passed away in December of 2017. He is mainly supporting roles. He was on 3 episodes of Newhart as Doc Owens. He did several episodes of Falcon Crest and several guest roles, including Murder, She Wrote, Seinfeld, LA Law, and Law and Order. He also had some supporting movie roles, including Son of a Woman with Al Pacino, Courage Under Fire. That one was with Denzel Washington, and Red Corner with Richard Gere. So I remember him being in Seinfeld, or he always has that kind of familiar face. And it feels like you've seen him in everything.
Me,
It was
I don't remember seeing him at all.
right after it's more if you look at the older pictures of him after Street Hawk, like in the earlier '90s when he's got the full gray hair. That's when I remember him.
Mm.
Remember seeing him and other things. I'm here. Go
Okay,
ahead.
I thought you were kind of whatever, Braveheart.
No.
So that moves us along to Rachel Adams, who played Janine Wilson. Janine Wilson replaced Jane Modine as the female lead after the pilot because the producers felt that Modine was too young for the role. Uh, Interesting. She played DA Janet Fowler in 33 episodes, plus a 1995 movie of Simon and Simon. That's where I've seen her. I couldn't place her.
Mm-hmm.
Captain Betty in the Stir Crazy TV series spinoff of the prior Wilder film. Guest roles in A-Team. Don't remember her there, but I remember her in The Dukes of Hazzard. In fact, she was on one of the earliest episodes. Bionic Woman, Murder, She Wrote, Love Boat, and so on. I actually liked, call it wrong, maybe it was just because she was on the pilot, but I think I liked Jane Modine better as the character than I did Janine. I Even though I followed it, I watched the whole episode, and maybe you have a different take, Jason, but it just seemed like, again, maybe it's the pilot. You get that first run of people, and that's what that establishes it for you. But I thought Jane was better suited for me. I didn't see that she was the younger person.
Yeah, I in the pilot too, it was more or less it seemed like she was like fresh on the job. The young type. She wants to be in PR or reporting, news media, and the way they put Jeannie in the office there, it was always more or less just to play off of what Jesse was doing and to give
Mhm.
him a hard time about something, or it was essentially a totally different character. So I wouldn't necessarily, like they said, they replaced her, but I don't view them as the same character themselves.
Right.
So I don't know. Take it for what it's worth. I enjoyed them both. I think they both did a good job, and I just didn't see it as being two people playing the same character
Mm.
in the way it came off. So, and then let's get on to the motorcycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, star of the show. Uh, the motorcycle in the pilot episode was based on the 1983 Honda XL500 trail bike. And the motorcycle used in the series were based on the 1984 Honda XR500s. And the motorcycles in the stunt shots were based on Honda CR250s. So they used several different bikes, obviously for probably for like the intro and
Mhm.
the style shots, kind of like what they did with Kid and every other vehicle that they destroyed, in those TV series back in the day, where you've got the show vehicle, and then you got the one that does all the stunts that they can just
Right.
destroy. So and you can kind of see that if you watch real closely in the shots when they're doing the jumps and everything, that it's a different bike, mainly in the front with the suspension and all that. But that was basically show business with all these Hollywood cars and vehicles back in the day. The pilot motorcycle was designed by Andrew Probert, and the series motorcycles were designed by Ron Cobb. During the filming, the fiberglass bike parts constantly flew off the bike, of course, during the stunts.
Mhm.
And they had a second crew unit that always had 6 bikes standing by to replace the hero bike's jump or whatever maneuver. So they always had 6 on hand because obviously with these stunt work and all that, there are
Yeah.
parts flying off and all that. And then a little fun fact I found about the bike: Honda actually sued the producers and Universal, claiming that the series name was too similar to their Nighthawk motorcycle. But they dropped the suit after the series was canceled. So they didn't pursue that after they pulled the series for being on for those 3 months. And let's get on to a few of the supporting cast or guest stars during the show. And here's where we find the opening credits narrator, Ernie Anderson, and you can hear him. I instantly, once I saw this credit, I was like, yes, Jason the Wheeled Warriors. That
Mhm.
whole beginning intro sequence, it's the same guy that does the Street Hawk intro. Also on the Adventures of Super Mario Brothers 3, and even had some roles on Mr. Belvedere as a narrator.
Interesting.
It's a very distinctive voice.
We had Christopher Lloyd, which was awesome to see him, and in fact, to be the villain in the pilot episode. We're used to him being just the he got typecast with Back to the Future, at least
Yeah,
for me. I don't remember seeing him in Taxi, but I know that he had a big role as a taxi cab driver there, but he's still,
yeah.
I think, a good guy in that essence. But to see him as the villain in this episode, it just he did a great job, a fabulous job, but I got, again, typecast that,
Yeah.
"Doc Brown, what are you doing?"
He's been in, now I do remember this might have been his first like really villainous role. I haven't followed his career very much, but he was like the goofball in
Mhm.
Taxi. And of course Doc Brown, we all know Doc Brown. He was the villain in Who Framed Roger Rabbit,
Yes, he was.
and he was also a villainous character in the Dennis the Menace movie. He played this
I
like
remember that.
hobo or bum.
I gotta watch that
And
then.
oh, it's been years for me, but I do remember watching that several times, probably back in the early '90s. I can't remember exactly how he played into the plot of the movie, but I remember him being like this hobo, homeless guy that was like manipulating Dennis. So he has played a few villainous roles, but I thought he did great in this one.
He did.
The the scenes where he's intimidating that the was it the mayor or somebody, one of the political officials of the town. They throw him on the trunk of the car and he takes that screwdriver and just kind of starts
Gags at the
scratching the
car, yeah.
hood right in front of his face. I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And there's a couple other times where he's like, kill Mock. And anyway, I thought he was pretty good. Didn't do wasn't very good in that black vehicle once you got him off road.
No, he wasn't.
But I thought he did a great job. And then we already mentioned a couple times George Clooney.
Mm-hmm.
This was one of his earlier roles. I believe he had some other guest appearances in television. Facts of Life. I know he was on there, and then obviously he would go on to do probably his first major series was ER. But yeah, I thought he did a fun job in this one too, playing Jesse's friend while being hired by this villainous character to take out Street Hawk. So it was this epic battle, back and forth, and until they, that junkyard scene at the end when they finally figure out who is what,
right?
And it's too late then to kind of back off. The circumstances already happened in the episode. I thought he did a good job in that episode.
Agreed. And we have Dennis France, federal agent and rival to the commander in episode 12. He was a lead role on NYPD Blue for several seasons. Yes, I remember him. I've never really watched that consistently, but I knew who he was. I knew he was like the hard-nosed, stiff-necked type of character, and that's what he played there as the FBI agent. Man,
yeah,
he's the one guy. He does so great. I hate him because he's that good.
Exactly. He's always, and he's been one of those perpetual cop and FBI agents, and his whole career mainly is what I envision him as. He was on an episode of Miami Vice, I remember. So he had several other little bit parts in other series like that before NYPD Blue took off, which I think was in the maybe early to mid 90s. And it was a show we watched for several seasons, mainly towards the end of the run when they had Zach Morris, what's his name? Mark Paul Gosselaar was his partner, or was part of the unit there. That's kind of when we were watching that series, but it was pretty critically acclaimed.
Oh yeah,
and he's a great actor. Yeah. I really like him. And then the one that you missed, I'll throw a couple of names out there. Joanna Kearns, who we know as the mom on Growing Pains. In episode 9, she plays Norman's kind of long lost love from college. And she's this like research scientist type person. And at the building where she works, the company there, the head of security was played by Charles Napier. Now he's been in many villainous roles. I remember him as the one of the team that sends Rambo back to Vietnam in First Blood Part 2, and Rambo comes back and just that's when he like machine guns the whole office and goes over to Charles Napier, mission accomplished. Puts his knife down right by his face. But he's been in a slew of things. Knight Rider, probably all those shows that we loved back then in the 80s. He's been on an episode and played a bad guy.
Oh yeah.
So those two were in that episode, and there was a few others that were, semi recognizable as you're watching the show. Bianca Jagger, who was married to Mick Jagger at the time. But those were the main ones that kind of stuck out to me. So let's finally, after we've gone through kind of the history of the show and who's on the show, let's talk about our favorite and least favorite episodes. We're not going to go through all 13. Let's just pick off a couple maybe that stood out to us, and maybe some that we're like, I'll skip to the next one.
Going through, I guess I really liked the pilot as far as everything, because again, I guess that's the establishment, but you got to see a lot of things. You got to see kind of I was I hated to do it, but I simulated a lot of things. Like you had the call it the super pursuit soup mode on
Mhm.
Street Hawk with
Hyper
the break.
thrust.
Well, that and then the little breaks to kind of stop.
Right. Yeah.
It had turbo boost. I mean, seriously, they called it something else.
Hyper
Hydraulic.
thrust.
Yeah, but they did that. They the helmet kind of reminded me, although it's not as robust, I'll call it, but kind of reminded me of like RoboCop. You know, you had to have that visor and you had the little screen inside.
Yeah.
Um, uh, he had the ejector seat, and I couldn't help but think of Sly Rax from Mask.
I was surprised. I don't remember them using it at all during the series, but
They
just
did.
in the pilot episode when Norman was trying to, show him all the features and everything on the bike.
Right. But there was a lot of good episodes, and it's hard to pick um, another one. I picked out like a lot of the sound effects. Like you could hear the turbo boost after on season 2 and on from Knight Rider. Just things like that I picked up. But I guess my favorite was probably that, or maybe episode 7. I don't remember the title. But we have this Oriental guy who steals a small statue called the Ivory Emperor uh,
Mm-hmm.
from. And at first, I had to actually wait the episode through when I was jotting down the notes because I thought that they were literally in a Lotus Imports dealership. Like that's where they were filming, and then it took me a while watching the episode before I figured out. Oh no, they're importing whatever the goods. It's not a car dealership.
Yeah.
Um,
Chinatown Memories was that episode.
right. We got a cameo of the flag truck in there. I was all over that.
Oh, I missed that
Yeah,
in episode 7.
in episode 7.
I'm gonna have
Uh,
to go back and watch that now.
it's in there. Along with you remember Knight Rider when they would pull into the truck?
Mm-hmm.
There's this little box that would come down over his hood. They had that in the command center, just hiding out in the ceiling. So yeah, that was all over there.
That was a good episode. I like that because and this was something I really liked about the show. He had a secret identity.
Oh yeah,
I don't know what it is about that, but when you got the secret identity, and anytime that's in jeopardy, like when he's disconnected from the bike, he loses the helmet, and this one he, runs into the old girlfriend
oh yeah,
who kind of figures it out at the end, and he essentially has to trust her that she's not gonna
right,
spill the beans. So that was interesting about this episode as well. I like that aspect.
right. Like I said, that was probably one of my I call it my favorite episodes.
Mm-hmm.
How about you? What was your favorite episode?
Well, I'm probably going to keep going back to it, but the pilot was great. I did like the pilot because you want a good origin story, and you want to kind of learn how these two characters get together. That is Norman and Jesse. But I thought it was fun. The whole he's the show off and jumping the police cars at the beginning, and
Mhm.
the commander's all pissed off, trying to track him down, who it is. And then just the whole journey in that first episode I thought was great. And the fact that he's, trying to revenge his partner, and nobody else is, following up on this case, and he's kind of taking the law into his own hands. So I don't know, the secret identity, it was almost like he was a superhero when he's on Street Hawk to me.
Oh yeah.
And that was set up right from the beginning. So, and like we talked about with Christopher Lloyd, and it was just some really good shots. The one at the end when it was going to come up because he had talked about it earlier about trying to do a backflip with the turbo boost, whatever they called it. Not the hyper thrust, but the anyway. Yeah, and trying to do a backflip on the bike, and bringing that into play at the end, and watching them destroy that black truck over the cliff. I don't know. I enjoyed it all. I thought the pilot was great. Episode 2 with Clooney, I loved it because it's everything I love about 80s television. Because you get these ridiculous clothes that they wore back in the day, and there's this whole montage of them on the boardwalk, and there's the girls in bikinis roller skating by, and they're at the little carnival or something there on the boardwalk, and they're winning animals for the girls, and there's this rivalry, and then there's this whole scene where they're just going out for a joyride on some dirt bikes on a track and racing. And, Clooney always has to win, and he, rubs his tire against him, makes Jesse wreck. And there was that whole kind of tension there. And then just the way, they were both almost like two titans, or they're at the top of their game as far as being able to, control these vehicles. He had that knockoff General Lee, I guess you would say. Wasn't that a Charger?
That was a 60 Charger, 69 Charger with the General Lee rims on it. So I would call that probably my second favorite, just because it had General Lee in it,
But there were some great scenes with them going, back and forth, and kind of feeling each other out as Street Hawk and as this dude in the Charger. But I really liked that episode as well. I thought that was one of my favorites. Any of the ones that you were just like, get me through this?
Episode 5, which had a music video.
Yeah.
There was a video producer that played on Airwolf twice. I didn't jot down who it was, but I noticed who he was. Had a couple shuffles, but it seemed so like there was so much more drama that they lengthened it so much out. It's like they didn't know what to put into it.
Yeah.
There was just not a lot of action. Not for me. There's just not a lot of action there about the bike, about Jesse and the bad guys, and then at the end, it was just like a classic Mask episode. I keep going back to it, but the bad guy at the end is like, the scene was completely too short. Just like Mayhem and Mask.
Yeah.
Oh, let's go because things got tough. I'm like, what the heck? It was one of those episodes you could have dropped that. That might have, lasted longer.
Yeah, and the whole thing where he's trying to convince her to do like a public service announcement, and
right.
She's supposed to be the Debbie Gibson or the Tiffany of the time, and it was a little bit slow. We'll say that one.
I'm going to interrupt you. Episode 4 is where you see the flag truck.
Episode 4.
Okay. I have it written down here. It was the flag computer, that thing that comes down. That was in episode, what did I say, 7? Yeah, episode 7.
Okay. Number 4 was actually one of my least favorites, the Vegas run, which was we followed the showgirl that jumps in a cab and just haphazardly runs into Jesse and Norman, and they are trying to help her out and get her back to this courthouse to testify against her mobster boyfriend. It had it had that movie Bailout that we reviewed all over it.
Oh
I
yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, this is like the same plot. The whole trick where she tricks Norman. Oh, I'm gonna go take a bubble bath, and and she steals his car and bails out on him. I was like, this is that movie all over again.
Yeah.
So that one was just kind of, I don't know. I didn't really care for that one. I was ready for that one to be over. There wasn't an episode that I turned off of the show, but there are some that kind of drag or just are not interesting plots to me.
The only thing I liked out of that whole episode, because that was probably my second least favorite, was that one. Was the helicopter, at least the paint job, was the same one as you saw on Airwolf, where they introduced Kate, which was entitled Sweet Britches. So
Okay.
I kind of liked it in that regard, but that was all I liked about it.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a few other episodes, but as far as
episode 3
mhm.
is when I started noticing that Jesse never walked around with his bum leg ever again. He limped around in episode 2. Episode 3, it's all healed up. It doesn't exist anymore. Like, really? Okay.
Yeah.
They didn't at least extend that a little bit longer, just to make.
Well, I thought, yeah, I guess episode 2, he was kind of favoring that when he dumps the bike in the junkyard. But yeah, now that I think about it, I didn't even notice it past like the pilot because it was almost like, okay, so he's ready now to be on the bike, that he doesn't need a cane or anything like that anymore. But yeah, it kind of did that. Episode 3 was actually pretty good. I did like that one.
Yeah.
That's where you get this New York City cop that comes in. The actor was I thought he was pretty good at being the bully.
He is very good. He played on Airwolf and Dam Breakers, and he was on that episode. He had the same character, but it was more of he's kind of a cult leader in that episode, living this life of goodness, goody two shoes. But then they were out there in an old bomber breaking dams, wreaking havoc. So yeah.
Yeah, that one was a pretty good one. I liked his character, and I liked that scene at the end when Street Hawk kind of turbo boosts into the building, into that like theater or whatever it was, where he's trying to look for the money, and before it's going to be destroyed, and then gets out in the nick of time. That was just some fun stunt work there.
Oh yeah.
So what other episodes did you have down?
I had
good or bad
down, but me and picking things out. Episode 6, I noticed that they had this chase scene. This is where there's I think it's a fire. Yeah, the local business owner, they're getting fired, and the guy's wanting to keep his business going. He doesn't want to be bullied out of his business, essentially.
Right.
And towards the end, they're having this scene, and there's a Street Hawks chasing this Jeep. Well, it does a flip scene just like the A-Team in the intro. I'm like, dude, that had to be the same Jeep or same scene. It looked spot on like it. There were some other great ones. It was actually starting to get better as it got closer to episode 13. Like they got all the stunts in, all the scenes. You got to see that there was they added, what was that, a low level radar that they threw on.
Yeah. To track the ultralight.
Yeah. It was just, I loved it. I loved what they did with it. I liked like episode 13, which was a great cliffhanger in a way, where the phone company cut the cables or were repairing the cables. So Command Center was completely disconnected from Street Hawk, and he's having to go out on his own, and Norm is basically screaming, I can't see anything. Come back, we're impaired. But Jesse's like, no, it's still functional. I just can't go to hyperthrust or whatever he says.
Yeah.
It's kind of back and forth, but he's like, we got to still do our job, even if we can't do this.
Right.
Which I really liked. I liked that you saw how crippled the command center became, but still Street Hawk did everything mostly as functional as it could. So it was great to know that Street Hawk could be completely independent of the
Right.
command center.
Yeah. That was a good point there. And that was I don't know, they just seemed to build, more functionality, and
Mhm.
Norman just seemed to be adding stuff to it all the time, and I always thought it was funny, he's finding like these small little hairpin crack in like the wheel or something, and he's worried about it. And I guess you would be if it's, this is the bike that you built and you put $3 million into it,
Yeah,
that,
really.
it would have some high tech of the time as well, and beyond what the norm was. So, yeah, that was fun in that episode, and hearing him. And I really didn't write down any like favorite or least favorite characters in the show, but I did just feel like the rapport between Jesse and Norman throughout the whole show was just a fun relationship, friendship, back and forth. And just the way that they would go at each other's throats while he's on the bike, and Norman wants him to get back to the command center, and yet he would want to do this or that, or come on, just let me do one more thing tonight, and you know get this gang away from this woman in the park, at whatever 11 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't know, I always just like their back and forth. And then Norman's kind of subtlety around girls, because Jesse is just the ladies man,
Mm-hmm.
and could woo a nun, but Norman is just so timid and shy, and he's always trying the episode, I don't know which one it was, the episode where they're having lunch and Norman notices the waitress, and Jesse's like egging him on, come on man, just ask her out or something, or he's always like bringing her back over, is something else I can get for you, sir, and I don't know, that whole scene was fun to me.
Oh yeah.
What did you think as far as the way that they portrayed those characters, and even some of the other characters that were on the show?
They did very well with that character, because they're especially the pilot, maybe this episode 2, they were really almost at each other's throats in some ways, because he didn't want to be there. The guy kept showing up all over the place. Norm kept showing up all over the place and really wanted him. And he's not. Well, of course, in the pilot, he's like, "No, I got a bum leg," and blah 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 blah. And then they get this tension. But then, as the series grows, the tension of being, uh, well, really like an angst between each other, but working together, has became a friendship where they trusted each other finally on each
Yeah.
other. And even, joking and having the kind of the fun, like you would in a regular, I guess, at work environment, maybe not in 2018, 2019 anymore, but that kind of friend working relationship. The other characters, like, the tension of the police captain, who is always looking for a Street Hawk. I wanted this guy off this road. Blah blah blah. Let's go find him. Blah blah blah. And Street Hawk sitting there, right, looking at him. And I don't know how it obviously it's the character, but I loved how he defended himself too in some ways, especially around the girl. I can't remember her name right now. His coworker.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Jeannie, what's her name?
Yeah. So it was fun watching her,
Rachel.
um,
Rachel.
Rachel, to, um, I guess, really, uh, he's there. He's in front. And what do you got against this guy? Why do you want to catch him so bad? Why do you want to do this? And
Yeah.
the animosity there, while still kidding around, but then he just disappears. Where is he?
It was the whole
I kept waiting for the whole line of like, "It's not my turn to watch him." Something like that would come out because it was hilarious.
Yeah, there was I mean, it was a lot of Clark Kent in him when he's at the
Yeah.
office. Where is he? Where's he always going? And it was all, cover for me, that kind of a thing. And she was always digging. There was one episode where she's like really digging into everything they have on Street Hawk, and he's worried that she's going to find out.
Mhm.
And so they had that whole. It was kind of cheesy, but at the same time, it was still fun, I thought. And then just going off what you were saying with the trust that they had with each other by the time episode 13 was there, where Norman's still kind of screaming at him, but there's still a certain level of trust built at that time for Jesse to go out and do stuff where he has no control over the bike. Whereas, you think about like the first couple episodes, it might have been in the pilot where, Norman's like rigorously training him in that little gym that they have there. And Jesse pulls that move where he locks him in the gym so he can take the bike out and go do whatever he needed to be done at the time. So you think about that moment versus episode 13 where they're having to trust each other a lot more. They really developed the characters over the course of the show. So some good points there you made. Any other like overall likes or dislikes you want to throw out is looking over the whole series basically, or any other things you picked out?
I guess the only thing is that even though it's similarities, and I get that, especially with let me find his name here. What was his name? Um, the series director or producer, Bruce Lansbury, working on Knight Rider. To me, there's just a hair too similarity to Knight Rider, and to a degree, even if you want to call it Airwolf, because you got the hyper thrust, which is technically the turbos off of Airwolf. You got the turbo boost of Kit, along with the super pursuit mode brakes that they got.
Vertical lift, that's what they called it.
Yeah, it. I get they got to make this the super bike, so in a way, it's great. It's cool. They've incorporated it all, but at the same time, it's like they stole it to make it cool. So there's that intertwining. They could have. I don't know what they could have done. Um, I don't know if they could make it a Brad Turner's a Condor, but something that made it independent of it. The only thing it I can't even say that. The only thing it did have was that hyper thrust, but it was technically the turbos off of Airwolf.
Yeah,
that's the only thing I would say that it was like a split hair. On the one hand, it's so great. It's awesome that this thing has that. It's the incredible star of the show. It's the vehicle, which is the start of the show, like that we love, especially back in the 80s. On the other hand, it's like, why couldn't they have created something, I guess, more unique to make it that sci-fi vehicle, but it had its own oneness, its own thing. It seemed like they put too much, except for maybe the command center and that helmet. They kind of married Airwolf and Knight Rider together.
Yeah, and that's the way I looked at it. There's a lot of elements that they took to make one unique bike, because you think about Kit really didn't have any weapons, didn't have any like rocket launchers like they put in. They didn't put in the pilot. I think it wasn't until the actual season that they added the rockets.
They had a rocket in the back end of all things, and that was a rock in the back end, which was,
and then of course that laser that always turns around and pops out and he can shoot. And they did fix Kit with the laser for the car episode,
which car stole, but yeah.
Well, I think it wasn't the second one, but anyway, Airwolf had missiles and machine
Airwolf had a
guns.
laser in season 4, which people will argue that one, but anyway.
So yeah, and just the like we said, the pedigree of the creator there and being involved in some of these other shows. Maybe they did borrow some from the other shows, but I don't know. I thought it was still unique enough that it wasn't necessarily a direct ripoff. I didn't at least view it that way. And
No, I don't
maybe
think so.
it was the elements too of like well, like I said, I mean, it pulled like almost like a superhero uh, mentality to it, and even with just the secret layer and coming through the doors, like it always reminded me of Batgirl from the '66
Yeah,
Batman series, and the way that that bike, you know, kind of almost stole from that. But there was many different elements, I guess, that pulled together to make the the whole concept. So I don't know. I just never saw it as a direct like rip off or um, a cousin to one of the other shows because it had some other elements to it. But just looking at the bike, yeah, okay. So you put kid into a bike.
that's it.
plus
It didn't have the computer
plus
screens, but yeah,
well, yeah, you know, you had the readout on the the motorcycle helmet and so there were some other different elements to it to make it work with the command center and such, but I don't know. One thing that bugged me about it was the hyper thrust through the woods.
yeah,
I think
really.
I think it was the episode with the Vegas, the one I was talking about earlier, the Vegas girl, where they actually go to hyper thrust and he's in like a wooded area. I'm like, oh my gosh, really? Come on.
Well, there's even an episode where they're doing the hyper thrust. I can't remember which one it is. Um, but it seems like they keep cutting back and forth. But it seems like hyper thrust is going slower, even though the numbers are going up. It's like their speed up mode
Yeah.
on the editors kept slowing down instead of speeding up the series. I'm like, this is not hyper thrust. This is like cripple
Yeah.
or something.
It was kind of because you do watch the readout and how fast he's going at some points, and it's hard not to pay attention to that sort of thing and how it matches up to what you're seeing. So I can understand that, but I don't know. At the same time, too, like at the beginning of the show, more or less, they had the stopping mechanism for hyperthrust,
Mhm.
and then they went more into this kind of slow motion bionic man effect
Oh yes,
towards the end, where when he comes out of hyperthrust, it just kind of slow motion.
Mhm.
Okay, we're back to normal now, which I didn't really care for. I kind of like the having a mechanism to actually physically stop you or slow you down rather than just taking it out of hyperthrust gear or something,
right.
So yeah, I just want to be picky about it. That was probably something I really didn't like, but I always thought it was weird too. There was a lot in. You've got to film during the day because that's where you see the most. But he always, from the very beginning, when they're going out in the middle of the night, and taking care of stuff at night, I always thought that felt more Street Hawk than when he's out kind of in the middle of the day and everybody can see him.
That's
You
it. Yeah,
know, there was that whole element, and it lasted pretty much throughout the whole series of, all right, I got to diffuse this situation and then haul butt out of here before the cops get here. And there was that kind of aspect to it. And I don't know, it seemed like that at some points during the day, it would be like too easy for somebody to spot him and call the cops and then kind of get there before everything went down. You know what I mean? So that always kind of felt weird to me, just when he's taking care of business during the day. I like
right.
him as the night vigilante. I don't know. I could swear now you watch He-Man, right? Or have
It's
watched
been a while.
He-Man.
But yeah,
The sound effect that they use, I think it's typically when he's coming out of the command center onto the street. It could be sometimes when he was doing the turbo boost or vertical lift. It sounds like one of the creatures from Masters of the Universe. Like the random creatures that He-Man would come across and have to pick up and tie into a knot and throw back in the lake.
that could be.
and I'm gonna have to like confirm it. Maybe I'll do like, all right, here's a scene from Street Hawk, and then here's this creature from. I always had that sound effect in my mind that both were the same. I don't know if you ever caught on to that or not.
No, I didn't notice it, but I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, they stole the freaking turbo boost sound effect. Just saying.
All right. Anything else you want to add as far as overall?
No, I think it's time to motor back to the command center.
Okay. I will emphasize again that I really enjoyed the soundtrack, and just like Knight Rider or any of the other shows that have those other little themes that will pop up from time to time as they're snooping around, or
it might be one that grows on me because I associated it more to like a news, like you might see on like a hometown news station. This just in, it sounded more like that than it did what I would call a sci-fi type of theme, like Knight Rider or Airwolf or something like that. It just didn't catch me. It did not catch me like that. It caught me, like I said, like more like a news or this just in to ABC or whatever. So yeah,
I enjoyed it. And there's actually, if you go out to streethawkonline.com, they've got several albums out there. Some are like more or less tribute albums, some that try to mimic, because there was never an actual soundtrack released other than the theme was part of this Tangerine Dream album. But there's some other like it's more retro wave and with the synthesizer and everything, what my wife calls Miami Vice music.
Yeah.
There's some albums out there I would recommend everybody to click on over, and if you're into the music like I was, check out some of those tracks on there. I've downloaded a couple of them, and man, it sounds great. So I'm gonna have to pump it through the car and see if I can pretend I'm Street Hawk and
I think you got
on my commute to work.
I think you got 2 extra wheels.
I do, yeah. Oh well. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's about all I have to say. Well, we kind of went over through everything else. One more thing I'll reemphasize is the stunt work. I mean, the stunt work is the show to me.
Oh yes.
Watching it now, watching the just the practical stunts that they did. They actually jumped over cars. They actually, had the stunt drivers there. They're the shot where he's jumping over George Clooney's car, jumping over fences and whatever else.
Well, even zigzagging up that basketball stadium, that was actually pretty cool.
Oh yeah, that was really fun. That was the Dennis Franz episode. They put him in some unique situations, and then they just overperformed on the stunts and that crashing through windows and through fire and everything else that they could think of. That one episode where Rachel's having dinner with the businessman and their house catches on fire, and he kind of jumps through the house there to save them. And some of it may be a little ridiculous, but I don't know. They found some really unique ways to put those stuntmen to work, and you can really tell it watching it now.
Oh yeah.
So, as an overall take, like we've done for each of these episodes, would you recommend people go out and rediscover Street Hawk, or should they leave it in the past?
Oh, definitely rediscover it. It was a great series. A couple fluffs, here and there, but overall, it was a great episode, great series. Should have lasted longer. So yes, definitely rediscovered.
Yeah, I would definitely give it the rediscover as well, and I would recommend too watching that documentary if you get a chance, either on Daily Motion or if you just want to go out and buy the series. You're not going to be disappointed if you go out and buy it. But Rex talks about, I think it was Rex or maybe even Joe during the interview, about how that move from Monday night and that slot I think was actually right after football, which is a prime slot, and getting bumped to like, what was it, Friday nights, I think,
Yes.
that when it originally aired. Just, that whole move in itself was kind of backhanding the show and not giving it the opportunity to get the ratings and to, have multiple seasons if
Right.
it would have been in that better slot. So yeah, I'm kind of sad we didn't get at least another season of shows and seeing what else they could put on that bike.
Right. What was impressive, just not too long ago, I saw a Facebook post. I think I'm part of a Street Hawk group. I know you just signed on one as well. Maybe the same one. But there was one where they had a reunion, more like a Comic-Con, but over in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? Maybe it's UK, but I thought it was Europe. Anyway, they actually had Street Hawk. They had a Street Hawk. They had Rex, and they had Michael Knight, and a kit replica there. It was so fascinating. You see him jump on the bike, and he's like, "Rah!" Racing it down the road. It was actually kind of cool to see him there. It took me a minute to recognize him because he's much older now.
Yeah.
But it was cool, and you can see that they're willing to go to the shows, and
Yeah.
that's awesome.
They dug up some of the original bikes, I believe, over in the UK.
Mhm.
I remember watching a video, I think, of a person restoring one. And so, yeah, they had a huge following over there in the UK, obviously, to get a lot of the stuff that we didn't get over here in the
Right.
US. But yeah, I'm glad that he is out there doing some Comic Cons and stuff. Would like to meet him and just get his take on it 35 years later, whatever it is now,
Right.
on the show. But yeah, it's one of those that will forever be tied to the 80s and those television shows that we watched for the cars and the vehicles more than we sometimes did for the actual story and actors and everything else.
Right.
Where the vehicle was the star. So anyway, we thank you guys for taking this journey with us. I would once again recommend streethawkonline.com. There's a couple Facebook groups if you're into the show. I think one is called Street Hawk Command Center. And yeah, would love your feedback on the show. If you decide to go out and pick up the DVD or try to watch it over there on Daily Motion, and to give us your review and thoughts on the show. And next time, Wyatt, I guess we're back onto another cartoon series.
We are. There's so many. I don't know which one to choose from, but like we've said before, it's also dependent on if we can find them or not.
Right.
So your guess is as good as ours. So stay tuned.
Yep. So we're still adding to the list from time to time. I know I am. I find a few on Amazon, a couple movies that I've put in my queue to watch again and watch for the first time. So we're up for any and all suggestions you have for future Rediscovered shows. And thanks as always for subscribing and listening and checking us out on YouTube. And till next time, this is Jason.
This is Wyatt, and thank you for coming down with us and being a part of Rediscovered.
That'll work. And thank you, YouTube, for watching us do all of our mistakes and fumble through.
Wanted the crap out of Jason. Holy cow! You even changed a few colors there. At one point, you went like almost black and white.
Weird. I don't know what. I like Hangouts. I like the audio more on Hangouts, but obviously Skype is a lot better with the video quality.
Right.
So I don't know.
We need to figure out how to make those two work together.
Really, I need a better program to record or something, or record while we're doing the video.
Right.
So I can't have them going at the same time. I've tried that. Anyway, any suggestions you got for that? Let us know.
Yes, please.
Well,
We need a better platform,
yeah,
preferably free.
if possible. But okay, well, we'll let you all go, and thank you guys for watching us over there on YouTube.
Catch you
See you
later.
next time.